coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Victoria Hayes barely noticed. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with mechanical precision, typing numbers that blurred together on the glowing screen. The 32nd floor of Crosstech Industries hummed quietly around her. Empty, except for the occasional security guard making his rounds. Victoria pushed a strand of auburn hair behind her ear and glanced at the clock. Nearly midnight again? Her small apartment in downtown Seattle felt like a distant memory. Just another place to shower and change clothes before returning to this glass tower that had become her world. At 28, Victoria had achieved what many would consider success. Executive assistant to Nathan Cross, the brilliant CEO who had built a tech empire from nothing. The salary was generous, the position prestigious, and the work challenging. But success, she was learning, came with a price that compound interest couldn't calculate. Her stomach rumbled, reminding her that the granola bar she'd grabbed at lunch was her only meal of the day. Victoria opened her desk drawer, searching for another energy bar, but found only empty wrappers and packets of headache medicine. The fluorescent lights above seemed brighter than usual, making her temples throb. She pressed her palms against her eyes, trying to ease the pressure. Back home in Austin, her younger brother Robert was probably studying for his medical school exams, fueled by their mother's homemade cookies and endless encouragement. Victoria smiled despite her exhaustion, remembering how proud her family had been when she landed this job. Their small-town girl had made it in the big city. A soft chime from her computer pulled her back to reality. Another urgent email from the legal department about tomorrow's board meeting. Nathan would need the quarterly reports formatted perfectly, the investor presentations updated with the latest market data, and coffee ready at exactly 7 a.m. He was particular about details, demanding perfection in everything from financial projections to the temperature of his morning espresso. Victoria had studied Nathan Cross from afar during her first months at Crosstech. At 35, he commanded every room he entered with quiet authority. His dark hair was always perfectly styled, his suits tailored to perfection, and his steel-gray eyes missed nothing. Employees spoke of him in whispers, sharing stories of his brilliance and his demanding standards in equal measure. He had built Crosstech from a garage startup into a multinational corporation, revolutionizing how people connected through technology. Business magazines called him a visionary. Competitors called him ruthless. Victoria simply called him Mr. Cross, maintaining the professional distance that seemed to surround him like an invisible barrier. She had never seen him lose his composure, never witnessed a crack in his polished exterior. Even during the most stressful negotiations or hostile board meetings, Nathan remained calm and calculated. It was both impressive and intimidating, like watching a master chess player think 10 moves ahead while everyone else struggled with their next turn. Victoria reopened the presentation file, squinting at the numbers that seemed to dance across her tired vision. The quarterly growth charts needed to be perfect. Nathan would review every detail, catch every error, and expect nothing less than excellence. She had learned that lesson quickly during her first week when a single typo in a contract summary had earned her a quiet but firm conversation about attention to detail. The office building creaked softly around her, settling into the night. Far below, Seattle's city lights twinkled like fallen stars, beautiful but distant. Victoria rubbed her eyes again, feeling the familiar ache that came from staring at screens for too long. Her vision blurred slightly, and she blinked hard, trying to focus. The presentation was almost finished. Just a few more slides to format, a handful of charts to align, and she could finally go home to her empty apartment and 4 hours of sleep before returning to do it all again. Victoria reached for her water bottle, but her hand shook slightly, missing the mark. The plastic bottle toppled over, rolling across her desk with a hollow sound. She stood up quickly to catch it, but the sudden movement made the room spin. Victoria gripped the edge of her desk, waiting for the dizziness to pass. Her heart raced, and tiny spots of light flickered at the edges of her vision. She had pushed too hard again, ignored her body's warnings in favor of deadlines and expectations. The elevator chimed softly in the distance. Victoria straightened, assuming it was security making another round. But the footsteps that echoed across the marble floor were different, confident but unhurried, purposeful yet quiet. She recognized that rhythm immediately. Nathan Cross emerged from the hallway, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up to reveal strong forearms. He looked tired but alert, carrying a leather briefcase that probably contained enough work to fill another late night. His steel-gray eyes scanned the nearly empty office before settling on Victoria's desk. "Working late again, Miss Hayes?" he said, his voice carrying the faint trace of concern that Victoria had learned to recognize. It was barely perceptible, hidden beneath layers of professional courtesy, but it was there. Victoria tried to smile, to project the competent efficiency that had earned her this position. "Just finishing the presentations for tomorrow's meeting, Mr. Cross. Everything will be ready by morning." Nathan approached her desk, his expression unreadable. In the soft lighting of the after-hours office, he looked less like the intimidating CEO and more like a man who carried the weight of countless responsibilities on his shoulders. "You've been here since 6 this morning. I saw your car in the parking garage when I arrived." Heat crept up Victoria's neck. She hadn't realized he noticed such details. "I wanted to make sure everything was perfect for the board meeting. The numbers needed to be double-checked. The market analysis required additional research." Nathan studied her face, and Victoria felt exposed under his scrutiny. Those gray eyes seemed to see past her professional mask to the exhaustion she tried so hard to hide. "When did you last eat something substantial?" The question caught her off guard. In all their professional interactions, Nathan had never asked about her personal needs or comfort. He was considerate in his demands, never unreasonable in his expectations. But he maintained clear boundaries between business and personal matters. "I had lunch," Victoria replied, though the granola bar hardly qualified as a meal. Her stomach chose that moment to rumble audibly, betraying her attempt at composure. Nathan's expression softened almost imperceptibly. "That's not what I meant, and you know it." He set his briefcase down and moved closer to her desk. "Miss Hayes, you're no good to me if you collapse from exhaustion." Victoria opened her mouth to protest, to assure him that she was fine, that she could handle the demands of her position. But the words never came. Instead, the room tilted slightly, and she gripped the edge of her desk tighter, fighting against the wave of dizziness that threatened to overwhelm her. Nathan was beside her in an instant, his strong hand steadying her elbow. "Easy," he said softly, his voice gentler than she had ever heard it. "Close your eyes and trust me." The words sent an unexpected shiver through Victoria's tired body. Trust was not something she gave easily, especially to someone as powerful and unreachable as Nathan Cross, but something in his tone, something warm and genuine beneath the professional exterior, made her eyelids flutter closed. Nathan guided her to the leather chair beside her desk. His touch, surprisingly gentle for hands that commanded a business empire. Victoria felt the soft leather embrace her tired body. For the first time in hours, she allowed herself to simply breathe. "Stay here," Nathan instructed, his voice carrying the authority she was accustomed to, but tempered with something new. Something that sounded almost like care. Victoria kept her eyes closed, listening to his footsteps as he moved through the office. She heard the distant hum of the break room refrigerator, the soft clink of dishes, the gentle bubble of the coffee maker starting a fresh pot. When he returned, the rich aroma of brewing coffee filled the air, along with something else that made her stomach remember its emptiness. "Open your eyes," Nathan said quietly. Victoria obeyed, finding herself looking at a plate containing a perfectly crafted sandwich, a bag of chips, and a bottle of water. Nathan stood beside the chair holding a steaming mug of coffee that smelled like comfort and warmth. "I keep basic supplies in the executive break room," he explained, though his tone suggested he felt the need to justify this unexpected kindness. For late nights, when the cafeteria is closed, Victoria stared at the simple meal, overwhelmed by the gesture. In her months working for Nathan Cross, she had seen him be demanding, brilliant, occasionally ruthless in business dealings. But she had never seen him be simply human, taking care of someone who worked too hard and forgot to take care of herself. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice rougher than intended. The sandwich was turkey and Swiss on fresh bread, simple but perfect. Each bite reminded her body of what it had been missing, and slowly, the dizziness began to fade. Nathan settled into the chair across from her, sipping his own coffee in comfortable silence. Victoria noticed things about him that she had never allowed herself to see before. The way his hair fell slightly across his forehead when he was relaxed. The faint lines around his eyes that spoke of long hours and heavy decisions. The way his shoulders carried tension even in quiet moments. "Better?" he asked after Victoria had eaten half the sandwich. She nodded, feeling strength returning to her tired body. "Much better. But you didn't have to do this, Mr. Cross. I can take care of myself." Nathan regarded her with those perceptive gray eyes. "I'm sure you can, Miss Hayes, but that doesn't mean you should have to do it alone all the time." The words hung in the air between them, carrying weight that went beyond a simple meal or a moment of dizziness. Victoria felt something shift in her chest, a crack in the walls she had built around her heart to protect herself from disappointment and betrayal. For the first time since joining Crosstech, Victoria saw Nathan Cross not as the untouchable billionaire CEO, but as a man who understood the price of ambition and success. A man who, despite his power and wealth, sometimes worked late into the night in an empty office, carrying burdens that nobody else could share. As Victoria finished her meal and prepared to return to her work, she couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had changed between them. The professional barrier that had always existed remained, but there was a new understanding underneath it. A recognition that they were both human beings trying to navigate a demanding world, and sometimes everyone needed someone to tell them to close their eyes and trust that they would be taken care of. The presentation could wait until morning. For now, Victoria allowed herself to sit in the comfortable quiet of the late-night office, drinking coffee with the most powerful man in Seattle and feeling less alone than she had in months. The morning after their late-night encounter brought subtle changes that Victoria hoped would go unnoticed. Nathan's coffee appeared on her desk at exactly 7 a.m., prepared just the way she liked it, with a small pastry from the expensive bakery downtown. No note, no explanation, just quiet thoughtfulness that made her heart flutter in ways she tried to ignore. Diana Stone noticed everything. As Nathan's business partner and head of strategic development, Diana had worked alongside him for 5 years. She possessed the kind of polished beauty that graced magazine covers. With platinum blonde hair and ice blue eyes that missed nothing, Diana had joined Crosstech when it was still a modest startup, and many whispered that her relationship with Nathan had once extended beyond business meetings and boardrooms. "Interesting," Diana murmured to her assistant Jennifer, as she watched Victoria accept the coffee with a soft smile. "Our dedicated Miss Hayes seems to have caught someone's attention." Jennifer, eager to please her demanding boss, leaned closer. "I heard she stayed until after midnight yesterday. Security mentioned that Mr. Cross was here late too." Diana's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against her mahogany desk. She had built her career on reading people, understanding their weaknesses, and using information strategically. The way Nathan looked at his assistant during morning meetings had not escaped her notice. There was something different in his steel gray eyes when they settled on Victoria, a softness that Diana had not seen in years. By noon, the whispers had begun circulating through Crosstech's gleaming corridors. Office gossip moved faster than the high-speed elevators, carrying speculation from floor to floor with increasing embellishment. Victoria felt the change immediately when she entered the break room, and conversation suddenly stopped. Colleagues who usually greeted her warmly now offered tight smiles before quickly looking away. "Did you hear about the late-night meeting?" someone whispered behind Victoria as she poured her afternoon coffee. Apparently, it lasted until almost 1 a.m. Victoria's cheeks burned as she recognized the voice of Rebecca from accounting. She wanted to turn around and explain that nothing inappropriate had happened, that Nathan had simply been kind to an exhausted employee. But defending herself would only add fuel to the growing fire of speculation. The situation worsened when Diana began her subtle campaign. During the weekly department meeting, she made seemingly innocent comments that carried hidden meanings. "It's wonderful how Mr. Cross has been paying such personal attention to staff development lately," Diana said, her voice honey-sweet, but her eyes cold as they fixed on Victoria. "Some employees are certainly benefiting from extra mentorship." Nathan maintained his professional demeanor throughout the meeting, but Victoria caught him glancing in her direction when Diana spoke. She could not read his expression, could not tell if he was aware of the growing rumors, or simply focused on quarterly projections and market strategies. The breaking point came 3 days later when Victoria accompanied Nathan to an important client dinner at Seattle's most exclusive restaurant. The evening was purely professional. Nathan had insisted she attend to take notes and coordinate follow-up meetings. But as they walked into the elegant dining room together, Victoria noticed the way other patrons looked at them. A young woman dining with an older, powerful man at an intimate table for two. What Victoria did not see was the photographer positioned discreetly near the restaurant's entrance. Diana had tipped off a freelance journalist who specialized in corporate gossip, suggesting that Crosstech CEO might be mixing business with pleasure. The camera clicked as Nathan placed his hand gently on Victoria's lower back while guiding her to their table. A gesture of politeness that would look like intimate familiarity in a photograph. The image appeared online the next morning with a headline that made Victoria's stomach drop. Tech billionaire's secret romance, Crosstech CEO, spotted with mysterious brunette at exclusive restaurant. The article speculated about Nathan's personal life and described Victoria as a young companion without mentioning her professional role at the company. Victoria discovered the story when her phone began buzzing with messages from friends and family back in Texas. Her younger brother Robert called, his voice concerned. "Vic, are you seeing this guy? The internet is going crazy with theories about who you are." At Crosstech, the atmosphere grew poisonous. Colleagues who had once respected Victoria's competence now questioned whether her position was based on merit or favoritism. She overheard snippets of conversation. "That cut deep. I wonder how long this has been going. Anna, no wonder she got promoted so fast, and some people will do anything to get ahead." Jennifer, from Diana's office, made sure. Victoria heard the cruelest comment of all. "It must be nice to have the boss so interested in your career development. I guess some of us just have to rely on actual work." Victoria threw herself into her duties with desperate intensity, arriving earlier and staying later, trying to prove through sheer productivity that she belonged at Crosstech. But the extra hours only fueled more speculation about secret meetings and after-hours encounters. She felt trapped in a situation where any action could be misinterpreted. Nathan seemed oblivious to the growing storm, or perhaps he was simply skilled at ignoring office gossip. He continued to treat Victoria with the same professional courtesy mixed with subtle kindness that had developed between them. A fresh cup of coffee when hers grew cold. A gentle reminder to eat lunch when she skipped meals. A warm smile during stressful meetings. These small gestures, once comforting, now felt dangerous under the watchful eyes of suspicious colleagues. The situation reached its peak when Diana cornered Victoria in the ladies' restroom during a busy afternoon. They were alone, the sounds of the office muffled by thick walls and elegant marble fixtures. "You know this can't last," Diana said, her voice conversational, but her message clear. "Nathan is brilliant, but he's also practical. When this little distraction starts affecting his reputation or the company's image, he'll end it quickly and professionally." Victoria met Diana's ice-blue gaze in the mirror. "There's nothing to end. Mr. Cross and I have a strictly professional relationship." Diana laughed. "Sound like breaking crystal." "Of course you do, dear. Just like we did 5 years ago. Nathan has a pattern with dedicated employees who catches attention. The difference is that I understood it was temporary and positioned myself accordingly." The words hit Victoria like physical blows. Diana's implication was clear. She had once been in Victoria's position and had leveraged that temporary attention into permanent power within the company. The suggestion that Victoria was just the latest in a series of distractions made her feel naive and foolish. That evening, Victoria sat in her small apartment, staring at her laptop screen and the cruel comments beneath the restaurant photograph. Anonymous users speculated about her motivations, her character, and her relationship with Nathan. Some defended her, but their voices were drowned out by those eager to tear down what they perceived as an opportunistic gold digger. The Crosstech annual shareholders meeting was scheduled for Thursday morning in the grand ballroom of the Fairmont Olympic Hotel. Victoria had spent weeks coordinating every detail. From seating arrangements to catering schedules, the event would showcase Nathan's latest innovations and announce the company's expansion into emerging markets across Asia. Victoria arrived early. her professional mask firmly in place despite the sleepless nights and constant whispers that had plagued her for weeks. She wore her most conservative navy suit and had pulled her hair back into a severe bun, hoping to project competence rather than the vulnerability she felt inside. Diana Stone glided through the ballroom like a queen surveying her domain, her silver dress catching the light from the crystal chandeliers. She had positioned herself strategically near the main entrance, greeting important investors and board members with practiced charm. Every smile, every handshake was calculated to remind everyone of her importance within Crosstech's power structure. Nathan stood at the podium during soundcheck, his dark suit impeccable as always. But Victoria noticed tension in his shoulders that had not been there weeks ago. The rumors and speculation had affected him too, though he had never acknowledged them directly. Board members had asked pointed questions about his judgment, and competitors whispered about personal scandals undermining his professional credibility. 5 minutes to showtime, Victoria announced, her voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's acoustic system. Investors took their seats while reporters positioned cameras for the best angles. The room buzzed with anticipation for Nathan's presentation about Crosstech's future direction. Nathan approached Victoria at her position near the stage. "Are you ready for this?" he asked quietly, his steel-gray eyes searching her face. Victoria nodded, clutching her tablet with the presentation schedule. "Everything is prepared exactly as you requested, Mr. Cross. The technical team confirmed all systems are operational, and the catering staff is standing by for the reception afterward." Something flickered across Nathan's expression, but before Victoria could interpret it, the event coordinator signaled that it was time to begin. Nathan took his place at the podium, while Victoria retreated to her designated spot at the side of the stage, ready to handle any technical difficulties or last-minute changes. The presentation began with projected images of Crosstech's growth over the past 5 years. Nathan's voice carried easily through the ballroom as he discussed market penetration, technological innovations, and strategic partnerships. He was in his element, commanding the attention of hundreds of influential people who hung on his every word. But halfway through his prepared remarks about quarterly earnings, Nathan paused. The silence stretched for several heartbeats while he stared out at the sea of expectant faces. Victoria felt her pulse quicken, wondering if there was a technical problem with the teleprompter or projection system. "Ladies and gentlemen," Nathan said, his voice taking on a different quality, warmer and more personal than his usual corporate tone, "I have been discussing numbers and projections for the past 20 minutes. But today, I want to talk about something more important than quarterly profits or market share." A murmur rippled through the audience. This deviation from his prepared speech was unexpected, and Victoria felt a flutter of anxiety in her stomach. She glanced toward Diana, whose perfectly composed expression had shifted to one of sharp attention. "Success in business requires more than brilliant strategies or innovative technology," Nathan continued, his eyes moving across the crowd before settling on Victoria. "It requires people who demonstrate integrity, dedication, and excellence, even when no one is watching. It requires individuals who work tirelessly, not for personal glory, but because they believe in something greater than themselves." Victoria's breath caught in her throat. She could feel hundreds of eyes turning in her direction, and heat crept up her neck, despite her efforts to remain composed. "My assistant, Victoria Hayes, embodies these qualities," Nathan said, his voice growing stronger with each word. "For months, she has faced whispers and speculation about her character and motivations. She has endured judgment from people who do not know her, who have never witnessed her work ethic or her unwavering commitment to excellence." The ballroom had fallen, completely silent, except for the soft clicking of camera shutters. Victoria felt exposed and protected simultaneously, terrified and grateful for Nathan's public acknowledgement. "I have remained silent about these rumors for too long," Nathan continued, stepping away from the podium to address the audience more directly. "My silence was meant to protect this company's reputation. But instead, it allowed lies to flourish and damage someone who deserved better." Diana's face had gone pale, her ice-blue eyes fixed on Nathan with an expression Victoria had never seen before. Raw fury mixed with something that looked almost like panic. "Victoria Hayes earned her position through competence, intelligence, and dedication," Nathan declared, his voice carrying to every corner of the ballroom. She has never asked for special treatment, never sought shortcuts, and never compromised her integrity. Any suggestion otherwise is not only false but insulting to a woman who represents the best of what Crosstech stands for. Victoria felt tears threatening behind her eyes, but she refused to let them fall in front of so many strangers. Nathan's words were more than a professional endorsement. They were a public declaration of respect and recognition that went beyond salary or job titles. More than that, Nathan said, his eyes finding Victoria's across the crowded room. She has reminded me what it means to care about something beyond profit margins and stock prices. Victoria Hayes has shown me that true strength includes vulnerability, that leadership requires compassion, and that the most valuable connections are built on trust rather than transactions. The silence in the ballroom was deafening. Victoria could hear her own heartbeat, could feel the weight of hundreds of stares. But all that mattered was the man at the podium who had chosen honesty over reputation. So I want to be absolutely clear, Nathan concluded, his voice steady and sure. Victoria Hayes is not my assistant because of any personal relationship. Our personal relationship exists because she is extraordinary at everything she does, including making me want to be a better man. The applause began slowly. Scattered clapping from a few audience members who seemed moved by Nathan's unexpected honesty. But it grew, spreading through the ballroom until it became a sustained ovation that seemed to wash away weeks of whispers and speculation. Victoria felt something break open in her chest. Not the brittle crack of walls being damaged, but the warm expansion of barriers being lowered by choice rather than force. When Nathan stepped down from the podium and walked directly toward her, she did not retreat or look away. "Close your eyes," he said when he reached her, his voice soft enough that only she could hear despite the crowd around them. "And trust that this is real." Victoria obeyed, feeling Nathan's hands gentle on her shoulders, grounding her in the moment. When she opened her eyes, his face was close to hers, and she could see everything he had been too careful to show before. Love, hope, and the kind of vulnerability that required tremendous courage. "Are you ready to stop hiding?" Nathan asked, his gray eyes searching hers. Victoria thought of her small apartment, of the whispers that had followed her through Crosstech's corridors, of Diana's cruel words, and her own fears about being seen as weak or opportunistic. Then she thought of Nathan's kindness during her late-night breakdown of coffee that appeared on her desk, of a man powerful enough to command boardrooms who chose to make her feel safe. "I'm ready," she whispered, and meant it completely. The reception that followed was different than any corporate event Victoria had attended. Colleagues who had whispered behind her back now approached with genuine respect, apologizing for their assumptions and congratulating her on Nathan's public endorsement. Investors shook her hand and praised her dedication to the company. Diana left early, her silver dress disappearing through the ballroom's exit without a goodbye to anyone. Victoria felt a moment of sympathy for the woman who had tried so hard to destroy what she could not control, but the feeling passed quickly. Later that evening, Victoria and Nathan walked along Seattle's waterfront, the city lights reflecting off the dark water of Puget Sound. They talked about everything and nothing, about dreams and fears and the future they wanted to build together. "Are you worried about what people will say?" Victoria asked as they paused near a bench overlooking the harbor. Nathan considered the question seriously. "I spent years worrying about other people's opinions," he said finally. "It kept me safe, but also kept me alone. I would rather face judgment with you than remain perfect by myself." Victoria leaned against his shoulder, feeling the solid warmth of him against her side. "My brother is going to be insufferable when he finds out he was right about you caring for me." Nathan laughed, the sound rich and genuine in the cool night air. "I look forward to meeting him. And your parents? And anyone else who matters to you." As they walked back toward the city, Victoria realized that the story Diana had tried to write about her and Nathan had been replaced by one they chose to tell themselves. Not a tale of scandal or opportunism, it's but one of two people who found each other across professional boundaries and chose love over reputation. The whispers would continue, but they no longer had the power to hurt. Victoria had learned that true strength came not from carrying burdens alone, but from choosing the right person to share them with. And Nathan had discovered that the greatest success was not measured in dollars or market share, but in finding someone who saw past his achievements to the man beneath. In the end, they had both learned to trust the most important voice of all, their own hearts, speaking clearly above the noise of other people's expectations.